Well, this was better than I thought it was gonna be. Lisa Frankenstein stars Katherine Newton, Cole Sprouse, and is directed by Robin Williams' daughter, Zelda Williams. Now, this kind of movie I usually hate. It's a weird, raunchy romantic comedy. I don't have anything against those movies, it's just that those aren't my kind of movies, but somehow I ended up thoroughly enjoying Lisa Frankenstein. Now, the premise of this film isn't unique per se, but it's definitely super out there. You have Lisa, who's played by Katherine Newton, and she's, a typical outcast, doesn't really get along with anybody, is a bit of a socially awkward person, and she ends up in a romantic relationship with this zombie that rises from the dead, and they end up committing murders together. It's very weird, but it's a unique premise. I mean, kind of unique. It's very similar to other films that Tim Burton has done, say with something like Corpse Bride or something similar like Edward Scissorhand. This film is definitely very inspired by anything that Tim Burton has done. And this film takes place in the 80s as well, and you can tell that Zelda had a blast parodying anything from the 80s. From the phones to the technology. This is clearly inspired by a Frankenstein story, and instead of it being like an electric bed that rises a zombie from the dead, it's a electric tanning bed. How more 80s can you get than a freaking tanning bed? And the set designs are great as well. This clearly is inspired by how Edward Scissorhand looked with the way the neighborhood looked in that film, and in this film, it's no different. It looks like they just ripped a neighborhood straight from the 80s. You have houses that have a ton of pink flamingos in front of them. You have people with lawn chairs in front of their houses. It's clearly inspired by a suburban 80s neighborhood. And the makeup is done really well too. The makeup that they put on Cole Sprouse for his zombie makeup is done surprisingly very well. You can tell it's kind of cheap, but they make it work with the lighting and the camera angles they use for the makeup. And the film is surprisingly very entertaining in that, what the hell am I even watching kind of way. The premise is so weird, watching these two people fall in love. One's a zombie, that's already weird enough, but also they're committing murders in a neighborhood. But the film tries to justify their murders because everybody in the neighborhood's a giant piece of shit besides Lisa and this zombie. And surprisingly, their chemistry works very well. It's really weird how this film makes their relationship work so well in this movie. And even though the chemistry between these two characters is pretty solid, I will say the dialogue is pretty cringy between these two sometimes. Yes, the film is parodying the 80s, so it's supposed to have, that 80s hip slang, though it's still pretty cringy. Though what really makes these two characters' chemistry work is Cole Sprouse and Katherine Newton's acting. Katherine Newton has played characters like this before, a socially awkward nerd, kind of a loner, and I have to say, this might be my favorite film of hers. I've seen her other film, Freaky, and I thought that was okay, and she does kind of pretty much play the exact same character in this one that she did in the last one, though I will say I had a pretty good time watching this one. Her performance was pretty solid. And surprisingly enough, Cole Sprouse steals the show, even though he gets little to no dialogue. He only gets like one dialogue scene in the very last scene of the movie. The rest of the time, he can only use his facial expressions to emphasize what his character is thinking. And he does a pretty damn good job at it, especially with his eyes. Just looking at his eyes, you can tell exactly what this character is thinking and feeling. And I feel like Cole Sprouse did a pretty damn good job with this role. And I think the biggest surprise for me is definitely how hilarious this movie is. Almost every single joke just worked for me. I had a ball watching this. From the comedic timing of all the jokes, everything was just so well done. I did not expect me to enjoy this movie that much, but again, it's just so funny, and the chemistry between the main two characters works so well that I guess can't help but say that I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Now, is this film a masterpiece? Of course not. It's a fun, goofy, silly little film you can watch maybe on Valentine's Day. It is technically a romantic comedy, though I will say it's got a weird twist to it where I wouldn't really recommend it for Valentine's Day, seeing how, there's murder in the movie, but I can see couples going out and having a pretty good time watching this one. And I of course have to give props to Zelda Williams. This is her very first directorial debut and she did a fantastic job with this one. You can tell that she had a blast directing and creating this movie. I mean, Zelda, your dad will be proud of you. I can guarantee it. Which is why I'm gonna give Lisa Frankenstein a nice silver top hat rating. Now like I said, romantic comedies aren't really my thing, but you know what? I had a good time watching this one. I surprisingly had a thoroughly good time. And you know what? If you have a nice romantic partner to go with on Valentine's Day, you got nothing planned, maybe go see this. Maybe you'll have a nice time too. Guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe for more content. And have you seen Lisa Frankenstein? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you have a fantastic night, and as always, stay fancy.